The Forum at 8 with Xolani Gwala.
9.5 minutes after 8. Good morning to you. Welcome to the Forum at 8 here on SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader. Right, and I'm looking at my SMS line here. Lots of SMSs about the Amplatz issue, but we'll look at that some other time. Let me just tell you now, SMSs in relation to what we're going to be talking about. Mano in Pretoria says, I'm interested to see if the ANC and its alliance partners will stand up and stop the Eskom hike like they did with the Spear exhibition. That's Mano in Pretoria. And the reason why Mano is saying this is because yesterday was the first day of the public hearings by energy regulator NERSA on Eskom's proposed electricity price increases. And Eskom, of course, has applied to raise electricity prices by 16% year on year over the next 5 years. The power utility estimates that it will need 1.1 trillion rand for its infrastructure maintenance, staff costs and growth, and that South African public will have to foot the bill. Eskom's proposal has not gone unchallenged, though, with a number of organizations raising sharp objections. Let's hear what these objections are about then, and of course how Eskom justifies the application. On the line for me this morning, Tulufelo Mulife, who is the Group Executive for Customer Services at Eskom. Very good morning to you, Tulufelo. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Xolani. Good morning to listeners.
Thanks indeed for your time. Also joining me this morning, Viola Manuel, Executive Director at the Cape Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Viola, good morning.
Good morning, Xolani.
Hi. And Ivan Jim, National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa's General Secretary. Ivan, good morning.
Good morning, Colin. Good morning to listeners.
Thank you very much. Let me start with Tulufelo. As Eskom, you made a presentation and you will be making another one in Port Elizabeth this morning. How do you justify this application?
Yeah, thank you for that, Xolani. We as Eskom, this is obviously our third price application, MYPD3. We need to make sure that we recover the cost of producing electricity, which really includes our operating cost, the cost of operating and maintaining our assets and the network, as well as the full cost of financing the capacity program that we are currently busy with. So we really need to make sure that we actually get to cost-reflective tariffs and making sure that we recover the cost of producing electricity.
But let's look at the detail. When it's all implemented, if you were to be granted the 16% increase, how much will the price of electricity be? Just breaking it down as an individual, how much will I be paying?
Yeah, what the current price of electricity is on average is at 61 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
We are applying for 67 cents per kilowatt hour over the 5 years. And I need to just clarify as well that Eskom's own needs is 13%. So Eskom is applying for 13% for the needs that I've just related now. And the 3% is to really support the independent power producers as determined by the Minister of Energy, the 3,725 megawatt park.
All right, so over the next couple of years, it'll move from 61 cents per kilowatt hour to 67 cents.
Yes, that is correct, Kolali.
But it comes on the back of other increases as well.
Yes, we understand that. We are aware of the impact that this would have to the economy, but I think we really need to understand that we must balance. We are aware of the impact, as I said, from an Eskom perspective. But what is important is that we also need to make sure that we strike the balance between ensuring a stable electricity supply for the country. And therefore that means that the Eskom and the industry must be financially viable and sustainable to be able to do that. But also we recognize the impact on the economy. And yes, this is a challenge that the country has and NERSA in making that decision. That there must be that balance that has to be struck.
Let's talk to Viola first. From the Cape Chamber of Commerce and Industry, clearly the issue is damned if you do, damned if you don't, because the industry wants the lights on, but at the same time the industry is complaining about the increases.
I think, Kalani, one of the things we've got to state categorically is that this increase is going to have a devastating effect on the economy. Lots of our businesses are going to close down. Our small businesses are going to close down. This input cost is going to escalate radically for them. I mean, one of the biggest steel producers also did a presentation yesterday where they were actually pointing out the dramatic effect it's going to have on a huge international organization like themselves. And I mean, they're one of the biggest steel producers. one of the things that the Cape Chamber has been calling for is that we're starting to ask Eskom to start becoming a lot more innovative and a lot more forward-thinking in terms of our power security. So we're not looking for more of the same, which is very much what they presented in this third period. They've really been saying, we're going to stick with coal. That's why we've got to have these huge tariff increases, capacity. We're trying to build capacity. And what the Chamber is trying to put forward is let's start thinking a lot more innovatively, and let's start looking at the game changers like natural gas. We've got huge gas finds off the coast of Africa. We can start increasing trade with African countries. We're talking about the fact that there are existing pipelines, and it's one of those things where we're really going to have to look at it, the advantages of gas over coal.
But Viola, with due respect, again, Eskom may very well say you're backing up the wrong tree because it's not their decision to make about whether we explore natural gases, we go to the Karoo and look for, and we frack and those kind of things.
Agreed. However, Eskom is a huge stakeholder in that game. So Eskom is well positioned, as well as NERSA, that we're all well positioned. If we make an agreement that that's the way to go, if everyone puts their heads together, the influence that these entities will have in pushing that decision is not something that we must take lightly.
But is there, and in your understanding, of course, of the presentation made yesterday, Viola, is there a business case for this increase? In other words, is it necessary?
Of course it's necessary. I mean, one of the things we're concerned about is the fact that it's very clear that there's huge problems just in terms of our climate, there's huge problems in terms of the coal reserves, the fact that coal, the cost of coal in terms of wages and transportation is going to continue to rise. Those are the concerns that we're saying makes coal unsustainable, and also these tariff increases just to build capacity and keeping the skilled people around to actually run these power stations is not sustainable.
All right, let me bring in the unions then, Ivan. And one of the companies that presented, as we've heard from Viola, is a steel producer, and that affects your members.
Yes, obviously, Kolani, I think if you're listening to both reflection, the bottom line here is that Eskom 110% increase, and we know for a fact that once they get granted their application as it is, I'm not sure about this because our own calculation is that we will move from 61 cent kilowatt to 128 over the period of which is being requested. Secondly, I mean, municipalities down in June, which has been a routine, they then also add their own exorbitant increases because they must still continue to supply. And this increase is going to have devastating negative impact both to industry and to our own communities. Already with the 50 kilowatt which Eskom is giving for free to communities, which in our view must be increased to 100, and which basically our own communities who are basically suffering are not even using it for cooking; they're just using for light. Now, for us, from where we stand, we have already lost about 7 foundries. This is not a joke; they are closed. And having gone through, having called employers, having assessed the impact and the state, I mean, I'm talking about companies that have been making submissions to DTI to say, look, we need to be helped on the electricity tariff. We have now workshopped. We've invited Eskom. We have workshopped their application. We have workshopped the experiences of those companies, the actual negative impact of tariff.
Yeah.
But you must also remember that this used to be our competitive advantage. When Eskom sold its coal rights, that's how, as a country, we were plunged to this particular process. And we're in this crisis because Eskom shifted from its primary mandate, which was to electrify the country, secondly, to ensure that we got a competitive electricity tariff so that both communities and the economy can be able to generate jobs.
Okay.
And from where we stand, we stand opposed that Eskom must be given this exorbitant hikes, and for obvious reasons. I mean, there is no example in the world. It's almost like saying if health is a challenge in your country, then you must increase tariff of Eskom. There is e-toll for roads now. There's e-toll there's e-toll for energy. We think this does not work. We think we can be able to nationalize coal. Coal can be nationalized. I mean, countries like Italy, like New Zealand have done that. They have got dedicated mines who basically make sure that they are dedicated for resourcing energy for their country.
Okay,
Why don't we allow the mining oligarchy in the coal sector to make exorbitant increase and basically compromise a national asset like Eskom?
Your suggestion is that Eskom must have its own coal mines that will supply it so that it can then generate electricity.
I'm saying we can. This is the time when, in fact, maybe I should submit that there are alternatives which we can embark upon. Our concrete suggestion is that Eskom must be given an increase which is not double digit, which must be, we must look where inflation is, and we must, instead of giving them 5 years, give them 3 years, and in that 3-year period, let's nationalize coal. Let's put on the table other mechanisms that could be used, like, for instance, taxing the rich more, and like, thirdly, making sure that we tax capital flight and financial speculation in transactions that are being done. Bring back capital controls. Don't allow money to leave to leave the country.
All right, Viola. According to Ivan, then your members must be taxed a little bit more. I suppose as members of the commerce and industry, they must contribute a bit more in terms of electrifying this country.
I think one of the biggest concerns we have is that as soon as the mismanagement and poor planning of Eskom actually, comes to a head, then usually what happens is the mines and industries, which are the economic backbone of our country, are the ones that actually feel the rationing of supplies, the cutting of supplies. And now there's a call for, our members, organized business, again to foot the bill.
Okay.
And organized business is saying, you know what, we're the backbone of this economy. We're the ones that are creating jobs and creating the opportunities for work in this country, and yet again, we're not only bearing the brunt of poor management on Eskom's side, we're now also having to foot the bill. And if that's the case, then what we need to make sure of is that the voice of organized business is heard to say, we need to find alternatives. This is actually not the right way for us to go. Let's start looking at alternatives a lot more clearly. And another point that organized business made is that the integrated resources plan of 2010 has to be reviewed. It has to be reviewed. In that plan, there is no mention of the importance of gas or the kind of trade spin-offs we would have if we were to actually go into some kind of trade agreements with the countries on our borders that have these huge supplies of gas. So the economics of power and power security have changed because the price of gas has come down. And so what we're saying is, let's start looking at that integrated resources plan of 2010, of which electricity supply is a huge part of it.
All right, Viola.
Let's review that.
Tulefela, we're going to come to you in a minute because there are so many questions for you to answer, especially this question about whether we're going to move from 61 cents per kilowatt hour to 67 or is it 128? And I've got a couple of SMSs that relate to that and I'll read them for you in a minute. But Gift in PE already at the venue of the hearings. Gift, how do you feel about this matter?
Hi, Xolani, and hi to your guest.
Yeah.
Look, first and foremost, Xolani, I'm quite shocked that Eskom could convene a public hearing here in P at Summerstrand Hotel, which to me is a leafy suburb, not accessible to poor and working class communities, and I view that as very unacceptable and very horrifying. Secondly, Xolani, to me, I think NASA must just respect Eskom's request that this multi-year price determination should have a duration of 5 years, which to me is going to run from 2013 to 2018 instead of the prevailing 3 years. And thirdly, I think it should not grant Eskom inflation matching increases for the next 3 years, which will be from 2013 to 2015. But lastly, Xolani, all these increases at the end of the day, they are going to affect our own black working class communities. First and foremost, companies in particular in the Nelson Mandela Bay have already threatened that they will be relocating to this part of the city, which if they relocate, it means there will be job losses. And who will be affected? Our own black communities.
Okay, Gift in Port Elizabeth. By the way, the lines are open. 0891 104 208. 0891 104 208. You could be a business owner out there and perhaps have a view on this issue. Please talk to us about it. But also, there could be experts out there that perhaps understand these issues a lot closer. Does Eskom deserve this kind of increase that they are asking for, the 16% tariff increase? 0891 104 208. Also, we'll take SMSs at 34701. I have a slight problem with my email, but I have an alternative email. Send us an email at chetv@sabc.co.za. That's Fabakshni's email address. chetv@sabc.co.za. Tulufelo, let me come back to you with these questions about this increase. 61 cents to 67, or is it to 128 cents? Tulufelo?
Mate, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you now.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yeah. No, I did indicate it is increasing by 67 cents per kilowatt hour. So it is increasing from 61 to 128.
From 61 cents to 128? Yeah,
over the 5-year period.
All right. No, that's going to be quite something because it more than doubles over the 5-year period.
That's correct.
And I'm getting, there's an SMS here that says, I don't know where the lady says electricity costs 61 cents per kilowatt hour. Durban municipality charges me R1.03.
Yeah. Kolani, do you want me to respond to some of the earlier comments and then we can, I think just to clarify that as well.
Okay.
This is an Eskom increase. It is not a municipal increase. So it relates to all Eskom's customers, our 5 million customers, including our municipality who supply to their own customers. So the increase will relate to a municipal customer bulk, the metros and all the municipalities that Eskom provides electricity to, and they will then have to apply in terms of the Municipal Finance Management Act for an increase that will then go to their own direct customers.
Because already in Kimberley, somebody says they're paying R1.48 a unit already.
Yes, and obviously that is a thing of the municipalities. We apply for our own increase, and then afterwards, as I've indicated, they would then also follow the process in terms of the MFMA. Yeah.
The costing is quite complex. But again, please address some of the questions raised. Let me start perhaps with the questions from Viola.
Okay, I think, yes, and we have seen the submission from the Cape Chamber of Commerce. I think what's important to state here is that we do agree. We're talking about the increase that we are applying for is to see us up to the build program of Kusile Power Station. Now, this is up to 2018, and we have actually given scenarios to indicate what the increase would be for future investment, and that would be in terms of the IRP 2010, which is actually not an Eskom determination. It's actually not an Eskom decision in terms of the mix of technologies that needs to be decided upon in the future. That is for the Department of Energy. We are aware of that. We support the gas strategy into the future. But this application that we are talking about is to really help us with the cost of producing electricity now, the cost of making sure that we can finance our current debt to be able to conclude our bill program.
So it's more about now as opposed to a long-term investment.
Yes, that is correct. And we have provided scenarios to show what the increase would be if we were looking at longer-term scenarios for future programs.
How much would you be asking then if you were to look for a future scenario?
If you look at the current IRP 2010, and bearing in mind that it has since been a change since our application was submitted, is that we would look at about 20% per annum over the MYPD period. But it's really for the decision makers to decide. It doesn't matter whether it's Eskom that is building or whether it's the independent power producers. You will still need to increase electricity. I think from our perspective, we've always said it is Eskom's needs and it is the industry's needs to make sure that they are financially viable to be able to supply a stable electricity for the country.
Ivan Jim was saying a little earlier on that he thinks, I suppose as a bit of an alternative, maybe you should get nothing like a double digit, get something less than 10.
Yeah, we need to understand what the implications are. As I said, we are looking for recovering the cost of producing electricity. we need to make sure that we currently have loan covenants that we need to be able to meet in terms of the financing, the funding that we've received for our current bill program.
Okay, so in other words, anything less than 10, you will default on your payments. Is that what it is?
Say again?
That anything less than 10, you will default on your payments?
We will definitely default on our payment. We have not secured 100% of our funding up to Kusile. We've only secured 80%. Now, we know that any investor would like to get confidence in any business that they are financially sustainable enough to be able to repay their debt. So we're saying that unless we can demonstrate to our investors that we are financially sustainable, we would not be able to conclude the bill program. And we need to think as a country about the implications of ensuring security of supply. Because as we know right now that the power system has been very tight, and they have said themselves, even at NUMSA yesterday, that Eskom is struggling to keep the lights on. Until we have completed the bill program, the system will still be very tight. And
is there no possibility of restructuring internally? One of the things that came through about salaries, for instance, that are being paid to staff.
Yes.
Is there no possibility of restructuring internally as opposed to charging people the 16% more?
Kolani, we're doing that all the time. We have given we've given ourselves a challenge based on what we have been able to save in terms of our operational expenditure. In the past 2 years, we've been able to save up to 9 billion, 4.5 billion in the previous financial year. And based on that, we've committed that we will save up to 30 billion over the next 5 years in our operational expenditure.
Okay. All right. I'll bring
so we have operational efficiency programs in place as we speak right now to make sure that we are efficient.
All right.
The challenge is because we are growing, we do need the skills. South Africa, as Eskom is competing for skills like any other business. So we therefore need to make sure that we have highly competent people to be able to run the business.
Fine. Let me do this. Let me take my updates. Ivan Jim is on the line with me. Viola Manuel also staying on the line with me. Lots of calls. Alec in Johannesburg, please stay for me. Sigru in Randburg. Sebastian in Cape Town. Ntsigelelo in Bedford View. Just please be patient.
The Forum at 8 with Xolani Gwala.
Thank you, Robert. It's 25 minutes now to 9. Discussing here on the forum Eskom's application, proposed electricity price increases. They are applying for a 16% tariff increase over the next 5 years. What are your thoughts then? 0891 104 208. Let me just read one or two SMSs, then go to the lines. Somebody, MJM says, why citizens cash cow for investors? Why are citizens cash cow for investors? Mari says, Eskom held a 35 million rand party. It's a waste of money, but we must pay. Eckhart says, when are Eskom shareholders? When is Eskom's shareholders? I suppose that's incomplete. Another one says, please ask this lady what percentage of Eskom income is paid in salaries, especially in terms of overtime pay. The percentages that it goes to salaries. Another one says, why do we have to buy from municipalities? We want to have electricity straight from Eskom. That's Eric in Cape Town. Municipalities are responsible for the high rates of electricity. We cannot afford any more increases. We only get 5% per year in terms of salary increases. That's X in Knysna. If Eskom is granted these price hikes, they won't need to encourage us to switch off, as we won't be able to afford to switch on anyway. That's Ayanda in Durban. Another one says, I'm a pensioner who religiously paid taxes without fail for 50 years of my working life. Because of the cost, I'm already living without hot water. That's Frank. Eskom thinks of municipal charges. If I buy electricity from Polokwane municipality, 1,000 rand gets me 887 units, which lasts just 1 week when I live alone. When I live alone. That's Zidhan on SMS. Right, let me take some calls. Alec in Johannesburg, hello.
Happy New Year to you, Kalani.
Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for your call.
Good, man. I think the first issue, and it seems to be coming through as a common thread here, and we need your Eskom representative to either categorically admit or deny what I'm about to proposition.
All right.
And then we can take it further on evidence in the hearings. Mm-hmm. What we're looking at here is that worldwide there has been a move commercializing subsistence products and services. meaning that is, and your Eskom guest has started to talk about investor repayment, and one of your emails that you read out just at the beginning after the break alluded to this. So this began with Enron, where the private sector, for profiteering purposes and investment return purposes and all the evils that entail that we all well know about, have now moved towards what we might call strategic stroke subsistence products and services in order for personal narrow enrichment of the society. Now, what has happened is Eskom, the market in which Eskom plays and is not an efficient market, meaning that they have not allowed independent power production, which would have had an effect creating a market-based price. That's on assumption of an efficient market hypothesis, of course. But that being the case, what we have now is that we have in this pricing a whole lot of cross-subsidization. There is massive corruption within the energy sector taking place. And that all has to be paid for in some form or fashion, and the only way it can ultimately be paid for is through the price to the consumer. And we need your guest to admit or deny whether there is efficiency within the cost structure of Eskom, whether the process that has been used is definitive, that coming from an expert point of view, that there are no definitive costing processes. We know of previous budget estimates that have overrun or underrun, and we have no accountability from Eskom for past price increase justification in terms of how their estimates have missed targets. The assumptions on which these costs are based and what the difference is between the direct cost of production and the indirect stroke overhead costs or corporate costs, as one might call it.
All right, just hold the line, Alec. Let me ask Tulufelo to respond.
Whether Eskom is trying to convert itself into a privatization potential entity, which ultimately is going to be at the cost of the consumer, much like what happened to Telkom.
Alec, lots of questions. Don't put the phone down. Let's ask Tulufelo to respond.
I will raise it in the hearings.
Oh, you're raising it in the hearings anyway. Okay, Tulufelo.
Yeah, I think. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Tulufelo.
Yes, thank you, Kolani. I think the one thing that I want to probably repeat is that whether Eskom builds or not, whether it's the IPPs or anyone else, prices will still have to go up. And, I mean, we can really talk about whether South African prices have been, when you speak comparatively, but we have, over the past 2 decades, been paying, the South African consumers have been paying less than cost-reflective tariffs. And we do have a funding model, and it is centered around tariffs, borrowings, and equity. We do have support from government in terms of equity, in terms of government guarantees, but we do not get equity. The only equity we got was 60 billion some few years ago. Now we're reliant on borrowings, and I don't want to repeat myself. Unless you can prove that you are really financially sustainable, you will not get any funding to be able to build. It's like you and me going to a bank to get a loan for our houses. The bank must have confidence that you will be able to
No, I hear that, Tulufelo. I hear that you have debts to pay. But what Alec, I think, is asking is the efficiency of the pricing models that are being used at Eskom.
Yeah, I think we believe, and we've done a lot of work. We've actually brought in people, independent people, to come and verify what we're using. What we have is what we believe is robust, and we can stand for that. But it's really, these are the public processes that we want the public to engage with. If there's any other models that they believe the NERSA should look at, that is really the objective of these hearings. So we would we challenge the public to come up front and say there are different models, and we had that yesterday. We heard about different models. And it's really up to the NERSA to look at some of the models that have been put on the table and decide.
Viola,
We've done our part in terms of what we believe is correct from our experiences and some of the experts that we've worked with.
Let me get a quick comment from Viola on what Alec is saying in relation to the pricing structures at Eskom. Viola, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you have a comment on the pricing structures as raised by Alec, because he raises this matter quite sharply in a very detailed manner that, well, ultimately he concludes that there's corruption, massive corruption across the energy sector.
Look, we are not in possession of evidence of that. However, I do want to say that what we do have is evidence of huge mismanagement. I mean, from mismanagement of coal supplies right through to mismanagement of the human resources and skills. I think one of the reasons the operational costs are that high is because they've had an exodus of skills, and now they have to import technicians with special, highly skilled individuals. They're working offshore and they've got to be brought back to service equipment. There's a specialized skill now that has to deal with the high voltage lines that can only be tended from helicopters. So there is evidence that the chamber has of mismanagement in Eskom. We don't sit with evidence of corruption, although we have heard about it. And so
you want to respond to the fellow?
Yeah, no, I'd like to please. I think the issue of corruption. Yes, if they have evidence, they must bring it to the fore. But what's important to understand is that yes, we have lost skills. When we had a delayed capacity building, we obviously had a lot of people. We did have an exodus of people leaving. Now decisions have been taken that we need to build capacity. We need to get the best skills back in. So you obviously have to pay them market-related salaries to be able to do the job. I can't. I don't want to sit here and talk about corruption. It's their view. If they have evidence, it needs to be.
Ivan, Jim, your thoughts?
But I just think that with the state of the economy and the socio-economic challenges the country is confronted with, we don't need this chaos. I must say that. I think it's a bit disturbing that there's a lot of naivety and not being on understanding where things are in this country and what they deserve. We can't be having chaos where, on one hand, we're doing everything else to ensure that we reverse the industrialization that has happened in this country. We retain existing jobs. We ensure that we create jobs. And, now as we speak, and if you're listening and you know what's happening at Eskom, it will be interesting to hear from the lady who represents Eskom. What was the original plan of those mega projects? For how long are they going to be built? For how long are they going to take now up to finish? Just now, it's been announced that Eskom in their submission, they accept that the sector that will be hardly hit by this application, it's manufacturing, it's the mining industry. And today or yesterday, there's been an announcement of about 14,000 jobs to be lost. Now, we're coming here, and people are not actually appreciating the fact that in this country, we're basically sitting over a time bomb. Eskom is not basically a particular cousin of government. It is forming part of government. So what I'm saying is that why should we be sitting with a situation where government on the other side, it says let's attack poverty, let's deal with inequality, let's create employment, but an institution of government is basically for a balance sheet. All this thing we're doing here is to ensure that Eskom has got a demonstrated balance sheet that is, they want 46 billion at the end of this particular process.
But in other words, what you're saying, Ivan Jim, is that they don't need this money. They don't need this increase. Is that what you say?
I'm simply saying Eskom, I can tell you one of the reasons why we're saying for the period of, let's have a period of 3 years, let's not give them 5 years, and let's review that integrated program between now and 2030 and ask questions. How many power stations do we need? Who's going to fund those? In other words, the pricing model must be revisited. And in our view is that the state must actually take its full responsibility to capitalize Eskom. This thing that Eskom is now run on the basis of an efficiency model, and the cabinet meet decide that we want nuclear. And I agree that we do need to have a mix of energy, of supply, but fundamentally, the state must actually meet, and I'm saying we must have dialogue with government and all role players. We have got alternatives that could be embarked upon, unlike destroying the jobs that we have now.
All right.
And worsen the industrialization.
All right, let me take some more calls. Tulufel, I'm going to come to you for your responses. Ntsigelelo in Bedford View, good morning.
Hi, Kolani.
Welcome.
The first thing I want to say is that I support what NUMSA is saying. Firstly, that Eskom should not be granted the 16%. And secondly, that the duration of the multi-year price determination should be 3 years, not 5 years. And thirdly, I agree with NUMSA that what we need is a review of the electricity pricing model. And I think this is very important, because if the Eskom speaker and guests there can just explain to us, why should we as customers pay for Eskom's inefficiencies? We know, for instance, that Eskom had proposed to complete Medupi and Kusile in a particular period. That has been delayed, but that delay is put into the way the weighted average cost of capital is calculated. And I think that that's very unjust. The second question I would want to pose to Tsulufelo is, what is Eskom doing about curtailing the cost of primary energy? Because coal is a big contributor to what they're asking for. And it's been proven that sometimes the failure to secure coal contracts on the part of Eskom is the reason why we're averaging at 10% in terms of coal. And why should the customers pay for Eskom's inefficiencies?
Okay, Ntsikelelo in Bedford View, thank you. Sebastian is in Cape Town. Hello, Sebastian.
Yes, good morning to you. One or two questions for your speakers, and then a suggestion, Ray Funding. Firstly, how much real disclosure is there actually at NERSA and any other hearings? Do only published accounts get put on the table? Does one actually get exposure to management accounts of Eskom, which actually shows you what's going on? Are contracts with large recipients or buyers of electricity disclosed and put on the table? One of your speakers sort of suggested a lack of information. In other words, really, how far can we go into this without proper information being put on the table and Eskom's books really being open for inspection, and I question whether they are. I would like to ask whether Eskom operates things like zero-based budgeting, where you look at your operations really starting from the very bottom and from scratch. Another question is, and this is when Eskom's just reported increased profits on lesser electricity sales than before. Are management salaries and bonuses tied to ever increasing profits, so there's actually an incentive for them just to keep making increasing profits on the back of the South African consumer? When one looks at their funding model, firstly, this claim that they have to keep investors happy by showing this wonderful balance sheet, it's nonsense. Eskom is backed by the South African government, which is backed by the largest mineral reserves in the world, more than sort of almost double any other country that's holding mineral reserves. Does any serious person ever think that the government and Eskom will ever go broke and not repay its debts in the long run? And when you look at this funding model, it's only a model that could only be used by a monopoly, where you actually double the price of your existing product being sold to finance new plants, which will then increase your capacity, from which you will get increased revenue streams in the future. Any business not in the monopoly situation would have to go out and borrow in the market, just not double the price of the existing product being sold to existing customers.
All right, Sebastian, thank you very much in Cape Town. Mkondo Etwatwa, good morning.
Hi, how are you, Kolani?
I'm very well. Welcome.
Sharp. Man, first of all, I want to raise the issue that the tariff raised by NASA is too much, especially to the working class and the poor, because we need to look also to the issue of the unemployment in our country, because also it is going to affect mostly on the issue of the industries. If the industries are mostly affected, it means that the industries will close shop or they will retrench more workers. Also, it means that the working class and the poor are going to be affected more than ever before. It's going also to increase the issue of unemployment in our country. I think our government, they need to look into this matter, because it's too much the issue of the tariffs that is by NASA.
Okay, that's Mkondo Etwatwa. Sig in Randburg, hello.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Kolani. Kolani, very, very few of us. Kolani?
Yeah, go ahead, Sig. Sig? All right, Sig, I don't know what happened to your line there. All right, let me get Tsulufelo to respond. So many questions for you, Tsulu.
Yeah, thank you, Kalani. I think maybe just to start with the ones I've noted here first, and I will go back to some of these.
Yeah.
You know, the issue of coal and mismanagement of coal. I think, yes, we've had some challenges in the past. I think what we know is that we have improved controls over coal quality and pricing, and we have at this stage been able to secure our coal supplies up to 2018, about 80% of that. So we see the rate of increase in our per unit cost slowing down to no more than 10% over the MY3 PD3 period, from an average of about 18%. But it's important that we understand that we must have a country impact around coal with the coal mines. We do work with the coal mines at this stage on a coal plus mine optimization project so that they can be more efficient. But there's a need, yes, for also our government to intervene so that we can work together with the coals. So we're quite confident that we have our programs, as I've said, efficiency programs that we've been working on to curb all the inefficiencies that we could have had in the past, and which is why we really are committing to 30 billion, as I've said, over the 5 years to make sure that we are efficient. I think there's issues about, we're creating chaos in terms of reversing job creation. We support key government priorities as Eskom, our build program, our capacity expansion, also support job creation, skills development. We have committed to government from that perspective. And we do have supply development programs in place as well. And as I've said, I want to emphasize it's important that we strike the balance between the two, because unless you do have, we must agree. I think we have a growing economy. It may have slowed down, but it will grow.
All right,
we're
going to come to Sebastian's questions. I'm going to come to Sebastian's questions, but I really would like you to spend quite a bit of time on Ntsikelello's questions because he's, particularly the issues of coal. Because for somebody outside the industry, one wonders why is the issue of coal, why is coal the biggest cost factor for Eskom? Because coal is produced here in the country, but why is it that you end up having to pay so much for coal?
But yes, I think the issue is that we obviously have the cost plus mine contracts, we have the fixed term contracts. But what we've seen is that we actually have coal that is being exported to the likes of India and so forth. And we find ourselves really competing in terms of paying export parity prices. So, which is why you will have heard our minister and shareholder saying that we actually need to make coal a strategic resource for Eskom, because it is expensive for us. Unless we have a hold on it, and we can make sure that we control the pricing thereof.
Key questions from
Sebastian. It's going to be difficult for us to. It is our biggest cost.
Key questions from Sebastian. In terms of these discussions, just generally, how the disclosures. I mean, are we able to see all the records, all the accounts, all the contracts?
Yeah. Let me get to that. All our financials, all our reports. If you look at firstly our annual reports. First of all, we report biannually. I think we're the only SOE, a state-owned enterprise, that actually reports its financials like a public listed company. We report our half-yearly interim. We have them on the website. We have all the details for everyone to see. We also report on our year-end in that regard. So if you want information on Eskom's financial balance sheet, income statement, cash flows, you'll get it on the website. We also, for this price application, have given all the tables, all the numbers, what has informed our application.
Yeah.
We've been saying you can actually build your own power station with the number of reports and tables that we've given. So there's enough detail, and if there's anything else that people are looking for, all they need to do is ask, and we'll provide the information.
I'm sure Sebastian was also asking about contracts with some of the big companies and the amounts that they are paying for electricity versus the amounts that ordinary customers are paying.
And that is transparent, and I think we have talked about that over a number. We only have one big customer at this stage who is paying less than the standard tariff, and that's the contract we have with BHP Billiton. We have not hidden that, And we have asked NERSA to actually review the contract. The reality is that we do have a contract in place, and at this stage, we have to meet the obligation.
Right. Let me read emails. I really have got to get everybody wrapping up here because I'm coming up to 9 o'clock. There's Ahmed Mutaya, for instance, director of the Movement for Universal Justice, who says, why must the poor and average citizens who have to pay regular rates and thereby subsidize the rich mining companies like a BHP Billiton, who get not millions but billions of rands in rebate, and result in those companies make billions of rand profits for their rich shareholders? The rebates those companies get only contributes to their own profits at the expense of the average citizen, says Ahmed Mutaya of the Movement for Universal Justice. I beg your pardon.
All right, can I respond to
I'm
that?
going to come to you in a minute. Just give me 1 or 2 minutes just to read more emails. Another one says the ANC year 2000 election manifesto said free electricity for all. Eskom applied for it 35% over 3 years and NERSA approved 31%. MYPD2, regardless of more than 200 stakeholder comments that were sent to NERSA. The new proposed tariffs of 16% on the electricity price will trigger inflation trends upwards, and goods and services will increase due to the increased input costs. However, it is shocking that Eskom charges companies like BHP Billiton cheaper rates, and everyone is raising this issue about BHP Billiton. Last email, maybe it's time for government to nationalize those mines that are closing. Okay, that's in reference to our earlier discussion about Amplats. Just a quick response then. Maybe I'll end with you, Tulufelo. Let me start with Viola Manuel.
I think just 3 very quick comments. One of the things that I do want to iterate is that I think it's important that consumers do understand the role municipalities play in this as well. I know that the municipalities have been guilty of not going along in inflation-led increases in terms of their service delivery, but rather they're going to mimic what Eskom does in terms of what Eskom is granted. So municipalities also have a role to play in this, and it's not a positive role. I think the second thing we'd like to say is that there is high electricity prices. There's very quick wins in terms of trying to bring those prices down. For example, the open cycle plants that they use for peaking power, instead of just running it for peak periods, it's now being run for extended periods, and it's run on the most expensive fuel, which is diesel fuel. So there's lots of little things that Eskom can do and strategies that they can put in place that will make sure that the costs of running Eskom aren't that high. And we're not seeing evidence that they're actually applying their minds to it. And then, things like, big marine engines, a lot of the bigger companies, bigger electricity users are trying to find innovative ways to actually get greater supply.
Sure.
And so I think we're looking for Eskom to start showing a mindset that says we're not just here as consumers. We actually are starting to think differently, and we're starting to find innovative ways to start supplying and dealing with the challenges of the country.
And from NUMSA's point of view?
2 things, Golan. I think one of the things we should say in closing is that there are alternatives, and we must have a temporary measure which deals with Eskom as we're proposing. Secondly, we must deal with alternatives. For instance, the banning of exportation of scrap would actually save energy about 40%. And if we were to go for a socially owned renewable sector by the state, we will not have those renewable energies being used for another exorbitant increase. Yeah. Lastly, Eskom, they could say what they say about the contract with Billiton, but the buyback program where Eskom approached companies to say to them, listen, don't operate. How much profit are you generating? We'll close down the plant for a particular period. We'll give you all the profits. Those companies have got a list of them here. Evras we lost after Eskom having given money to them. Evras we lost about 300 jobs. At Asmang, we lost about 400 jobs. Silicon Technology, we lost about 300 jobs. SA Metal in Mpumalanga, 500 jobs. Silicon Smelters in Limpopo, as I'm talking to you now, they want to retrain 600 workers. All the costs, it was money that was paid. There's no operation to those companies. And all that is passed on us. The positive spin-off, I guess, for us, is the job losses that we've already had. So we've got our backs against the wall when it comes to it.
Okay, but Tulufelo, is there a possibility of Eskom changing its views on the 16%?
Kolani, the answer is no. And which is why we're engaging with this public consultation process so that the public can give their views, and it is for NERSA to decide. As I've said, we have applied for 13% for Eskom's needs and 3% for the IPP as required by the Department of Energy.
Okay. Right. Unfortunately, I'm out of time, but we'll be following this process very closely. Let me thank you all for coming through this morning. Tulufelo Mlife, Group Executive for Customer Services at Eskom, and Viola Manuel, Executive Director of the Cape Chamber of Commerce and Industry, as well as Ivan Jim, National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa's General Secretary. Thank you for listening to the program. Thank you all for coming through. Emails coming through as well. My email is working now. Email address, that is. And of course, SMSs. Thanks indeed for all of that. We're going to take the news now, and then afterwards, Vuyombuli on Morning Talk. Cheers from all of us at AM Live. 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 Cheers from all of us at AM